They are restacking. They are fortifying. A lot of ways they're doing what they should have done a couple of years ago. I'm fine with that. I actually think that that's a smart play, unless you offset it by keeping Pete Alonso. Now, this is the day that I have full clarity. Like, no, we're not into bits really, and with serious stuff. No bit, no radio shtick. The Mets need to trade Pete. That's it. They need to begin the process of finding suitors and engaging teams and maximizing his worth and trading Pete Alonso.
Yeah, they just can't do it. Now remember, this whole thing, the Alonso debate, started why? Do you remember where this started?
Well, it was about the core. It was about the clubhouse.
No, but even before that you're right. Like that, made a big deal. But it started before that. It started because the Mets were open to trading Pete Alonso. It wasn't us coming on.
Oh, with the Brewers. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
yes.
That's where the whole thing started from.
Yep.
The Mets were in talk, and initially I'm like, what the hell? Mm-hmm. How could they even contemplate trading Pete Alonso? Then that led to, doing some homework and doing a little digging. And while I may have miscalculated certain things, I thought, well, the only reason why they would trade him is because of issues in the clubhouse, just not working, the cores, whatever. And while I stand by everything that I said, maybe that wasn't the reason they were looking to trade him, but they were. That's where the whole thing started. And, I just can't get behind that. Whether Pete's a leader, a captain, great in the clubhouse, that, to me, at this particular point is irrelevant. You could never be a properly functioning organization and have to be in a spot where you need to trade your lone superstar, maybe the best player to ever wear, and likely the best position player to ever wear a Mets uniform.
Unless that superstar has not impacted winning. Now, that's not his fault. I'm not saying, please delineate between the two. Baseball's not basketball. Pete can't come out and drop 39 points a game and will his team to victory. Baseball is very different. But if you've lost a lot with Pete, as I've submitted many times, you can possibly win a different way without Pete. And, I know there's the emotional part, which I get. I truly do. Then there's the business part. And signing Pete to a big extension, which I don't think the Mets are inclined to do. I'm sorry. I mean, there's no smoke around it. You know who his agent is. You've heard rumblings. Well, does he love it here? He does. Yeah, he does. But, I don't know. Well, the Mets maybe were willing to trade him to the Brewers to the point where the Mets and the Brewers already talked about prospects that would be shipped back. Like, it wasn't just a cursory call. Hey, are you guys interested in trading Pete? Nah, I don't think so. Click. It was more than that. Like, there was legitimate depth to the conversation, and Stearns was a part of it. So, to me, and this is the part, and I'm going to be honest with you, that sucks from a Mets fan point of view. You want him. On a lot of levels, you need him. But signing him is counterintuitive to building a team the right way.
See,
his position at his age.
It should be in addition to. I feel like you're saying this, and I understand the reasons why you're saying it and the baseball thought behind it. You're not going anywhere this year. Now, I think the Mets can compete for a wild card. That's a different story. You don't think they're going to be any good, so which backs up your point. Okay, so you particularly don't think they're going to be any good this year. Pete is in his walk year. He's going to cost a lot, in the offseason. If they do bring him back, it's going to be, you would think, well over $200 million. Maybe he wants even way more than that. Who knows what the open market's going to be. But you're saying they're not going to win anyway. Might as well expedite the process, trade him, get a boatload back, which is something I think that they considered. Obviously, not even I think. They did consider it. Like, don't shoot the messenger. The Mets, considered it. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been reports about it. Now, how close? We can nitpick and say, oh, somebody said field goal range. I was told it was nowhere near field goal range. So, but there were talks about it. So at least the Mets were contemplating it. And I can understand it to a certain extent from a baseball move. It takes balls to be able to think about trading your guy. Now, they maybe floated it out there a little bit, and the talk came out, and you saw the reaction. You saw the blowback. We felt the blowback. Imagine what the Mets would be feeling if, in fact, they ever did. Matter of fact, we were the shield, okay? The reality is the Mets should have gotten the blowback. I didn't trade him. I didn't say I wanted to trade him. I was just telling you the truth about what was going on. But I understand from the baseball perspective why you'd want to do it. However, BT, they can't do it. And I don't think I'm saying this just because I'm a Mets fan.
But why? Why can't they?
Because you just don't trade your best players. You don't do it. You build around him. I'm not saying he's got to be the guy to build around.
Yeah.
The guy hits 50 home runs every year. You know how, for this franchise, you know how impossible that is to find?
And this is the complicated aspect of the conversation. When you say for this franchise, there's always a different scale because it's the Mets.
But still.
But that's how you stop being the Mets.
But still, even forget about this franchise. That is a part of it, but forget about that. Pete Alonso, since he's come into the league in 2019, has been the best home run hitter in the sport. Better than Judge, better than anybody.
I've said that before.
The best home run hitter.
I've said that.
So now,
and the Mets have been one of the worst teams
outside
of one season.
Outside
of one season.
Okay, but he's been here since 2019.
But he's been here 5-6 years. He hasn't been here 2 years.
2019 was his rookie year. Forget about that. And 2020 was a pandemic. They won to 101 games.
And they're getting worse.
They're not getting worse.
They're getting worse. They stink on paper.
And you think trading a guy who hits 50 home runs.
Yes, I think it accelerates their. I do.
He's a consistent player that has proven he can play in New York is a good idea.
Sal, I do.
Why not build around him? Now, if you're telling me if you're telling me they can't get Soto with Pete, different story, because I'd rather have Soto in the offseason than Pete. Soto for 6 is better than Pete for 250.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, that's just the reality of the situation.
He's better.
But I don't believe that there are restrictions like that. I think what's going to happen is they're going to play this out. Pete's going to have a big year. The Mets are going to pay him more than the market value, not a ridiculous amount. He's not getting Aaron Judge money. But they're going to pay him $220, $230 maybe, and even then I feel like, ooh.
I mean, that's ridiculous, $230. He's not worth it.
To them, he is. And what's he going to get from somewhere else? So that's what's going to happen.
He might get happiness.
Now, they have to be able to build around that. It can't just be about him and Lindor.
Yeah, and that's the problem. It's like, again, it's probably easier for me to say this because I'm not emotionally invested in this. I want people to understand that. I do respect that, really. And you might not believe that. I promise you. I get it. He's your guy. But he's also your guy who's led you nowhere. Not all his fault. It is a team sport. The Mets rotation is trash, okay? There is a very high probability that they win below 80 games this year. There is a very high probability they don't do anything at DH or at third base, and by the middle of the summer, they're unwatchable. And you've got to let your brain go there. He's going to be 30. He's slow. He's a righty hitter. Open your eyes.
But then
don't tell me you can't trade him.
But then why? I would never say that. Well, I shouldn't say I would never say that somebody can't be traded, but I'm open-minded to anything. And while I do think that there's a lack of emotion from you, which is a good thing because there may be a bias in me that prevents me from seeing it clearly and just saying strictly baseball move. And I don't necessarily disagree with you from a baseball move. However, it's more than that. It's not just a cut and dry baseball move. And you can expedite the process. You can go out there and build it with also keeping a guy who hits 50 home runs every year. It's not like the guy stinks and it's just we're hanging on to Alonso here for he actually produces, plays every day, and he produces. The equivalent would be before signing Aaron Judge, would you justify giving a guy who's always hurt $300-something million where I could just say he hasn't won anything? And I'm not making the Yankee thing. I'm just giving you an example with the emotion. Yeah. And there were some Yankee fans who said, let him go.
Yeah, but those people are lost. I mean.
Well, but why? Why?
Because the Yankees were, knocking on. I know they were miles behind the Astros, got swept, but. I mean, basically every year they had a chance to win the World Series.
Right.
Mets have had one good year.
No, I understand that, but the Yankees have, but they haven't gotten
and
over the hump.
And he's just a better player than Pete. It's not even close.
Well, that is,
he's more box office and he's better, so it's not a good comparison.
Understood.
Okay.
I'm not going to say that he's a better. He's not good. But Pete does play more, and Pete does. And Pete has hit more home runs since he's been in the league in 2019. And a big part of that is he plays more.
I get it. This is a tough one. You know where I stand. I would trade him.
You do it now.
I would. Yes, I would be actively engaged. I would be aggressively, proactively pursuing trade partners, and I would look to go to Port St. Lucie with a different team.
One thing, and I'll maybe meet you in the middle here before we get to the calls.
Yeah.
If they go the way you think they're going to go, which is not very good at the deadline, then I would be open to it. And only in the scenario that Pete, would be open to coming back in the offseason.
But then you're not getting the package that you would get back now. That's the whole point, and that's why I use the word maximize. All right. This could be interesting today, so 877-337-6666. BT and Sal on the Fan. All right, Joe's in Peekskill. What's going on, Joe? How are you today? What's happening?
Yeah, I'm good. Like, I am a big Mets fan, okay? Trading Pete Alonso would be the last thing I would do. BT, let me ask you a quick question. Would you take Alonso at first base as a Yankee?
Honestly, no,
Take
not
him
for 6 or
without
7.
even
No,
batting
no,
an eyelash.
Joe, this is my honest answer. For the 6 or 7 years it's going to require to retain him, no.
Okay, then let me try it this way.
Might
In
be
the
more
National
than
League,
that
would
even.
It might
say-
be.
Would you say in the National League, would you agree that Pete is the 1, 2, or 3 best first baseman?
No.
All-around player?
Yeah,
the National League, I'm sorry.
but
It's
even
close.
even so, what does
probably.
that mean? What does that mean, best first baseman?
But
I don't care about
But
the
I
best
don't-
first baseman thing. What I care about is superstar player. Pete is not on that
Okay.
superstar level. He's the
He's
Met
not.
star.
He's not even the best first baseman in his own division. He's the third best if Harper keeps playing first.
Well,
Matt Olson's better and Harper's better.
Harper's always hurt. and,
But
there are
Harper's
issues
better. Who
there.
would you rather have the next
Well-
5 years? Come on.
Well, I mean, Pete's numbers are going to be consistent. You would think. There's no reason to. Yeah, he's a better home run hitter than Bryce Harper. Now, you want to talk about in a big spot? Harper's been proven in a big spot. Harper's a gamer. Harper's got that personality.
Yeah, better athlete, box office.
Pete's got ways to go to get there. I mean, he's still relatively young.
See, that's the problem. I don't look at Pete as young, and I don't know that Pete's going to age well.
Maybe I don't mean young in age, but the inexperience. Like he's played in one postseason.
Yep.
Guys in this town are measured on what they do in the postseason. He's got a lot to prove still to get to that superstar level.
How about Joe Manuette, BT and Sound on the Fan? What's going on, Joe?
Hey, what's up? Listen to me, Sal. Don't agree with this guy, VT.
I'm not
You
agreeing
don't
with
want to
him.
unload your franchise player. How many first basemen come along and
Joe,
consistently
did you get your
hit
ears clean this
40
morning? I'm not agreeing with him. First of all, don't tell me what to do. Second of all, I
I'm
didn't
telling
agree
you
with
what
him.
to do. Hold on there. Wait a minute. Put the brakes on.
Yeah, okay.
You said, okay, in the middle of the year, blah, blah, blah. then
It's a
I would
different
consider
scenario.
trading him.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes,
Really?
yes.
Who are you going to put at first base?
Oh, you figure it out. If the Mets are tanking, what's the point of keeping Pete Alonso if the Mets are out of it by the deadline?
He's got 40 home runs in the middle of your lineup. What's the matter with you?
Okay, now hold on a
You
sec,
gotta
Joe.
replace that.
Joe. Hold on one sec, bud. I know you've got a little issue with me. It's all good. Let's talk through it. You're right. You're going to have 40 home runs in the middle of your lineup, and you're not going to be good.
What do you mean you're not going to be
You're not gonna be good.
You got to fix the other part of the wheel over here.
I
Don't you
understand. No, Joe, I agree with that, Joe. But what I'm saying, thanks for the call, bud. The way you do that is to trade a star like Pete to get a boatload of assets to accelerate the rebuilding of the wheel. I mean, I don't know if you realize it. The Mets are miles from a World Series. They're on a raft. They can't even see the island. Forget about being on the island. There's nothing visible. They're not good.
Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying in that regard, to where they're not going to become next level World Series contenders until the guys that they have in the minor leagues start to come up and have their impact felt.
Yep.
That's just the reality. You don't want to admit it as a Met fan. They could be a playoff team. I mean, maybe they could get lucky and go on a little bit of a run, but the reality is they're not going to be truly built to be a legit World Series. Not this year. Maybe next year when some of these guys start to come up and then they could maybe add Soto or whatever it may be. That's a topic for a different day.
Mm-hmm.
But they're right now, as currently constructed, they're not going to be a World Series team. And the idea that you wouldn't be open to trading Pete if they stink at the deadline,
I don't get
that
it.
doesn't make any sense. Like that's for what? Like why wouldn't you look to trade him? I'm not saying you can never bring him back. You trade him. He's going to be a rental to some other team. You get a haul back, and then you go re-sign him if you want. Like, that would be actually smart to do. Right now, if you do it, and this is where I disagree with BT, if you do it now, you're giving up on this season, and I'm not about to give up on seasons.
877-337-6666. BT and Sal on the Fan. We're inside of our Town Fair Tire studio. Our friends at Town Fair remind you that you always get the guaranteed lowest price on name brand tires from Connecticut to Maine. Nobody beats Town Fair Tire. Nobody. Let's get Gene in Jersey City on the Fan. What's going on, Gino?
Hey, good morning, BT and Sal. Sal, you're a paisan of mine. BT, we go back a long way. Big Met fan. I'm going to agree with BT. BT's my man here. If there's a deal out there that makes the Mets better, we trade Alonso. And I don't like this emotional stuff. You know, it's not like Pete's been here for like 15 years. He's been here 5 years. And I think it's a weak excuse to say keep Pete here because he's homegrown. He's a lifelong Met. The Mets are more than 2 years away, maybe 3 years away. And I hate to say this, and BT, you know I'm a diehard Met fan.
Yep.
I don't think the Mets are going to win with or without him. And that's the way the Mets have been going. So that's it. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah,
I was going to say, Gene, thanks for the call, but and that's why listen. If he was 26, it's different. To me, we're deep enough into the Pete Alonso experience, with all due respect, to evaluate it objectively and without emotion, which is tough, and say, all right, man, he is a prodigious power hitter, one of the best ever. He really is. Ralph Kiner, the quickest or whatever. That's literally true. But they've done nothing with him. Not all his fault. But now I'm ready to pivot and see what's next.
We have
what
seen.
What else could you do?
Well, but I'm not taking the emotion out of it. And I know that we have seen other teams survive losing star players, or getting rid of guys or letting guys walk. Oh, how are they going to be good without this guy? The Islanders, for example, Tavares, right?
Yeah.
He
Good
walks,
call.
Everybody's ticked off. The Islanders get to 2 straight Eastern Conference Finals. So you can get better, and it's other examples have happened too, and some of them not coming to my mind right off the top of my head. But it's not like the Mets can't win without Pete. I understand that. However, this is also fandom. And there is something to be said. You can't ask me to take the emotion totally out of it. The Mets themselves can do that. And by the way, they did. I know it was a different general manager with Billy Epler, but same owner. Pete was on the block. There were talks about it. So this is not far-fetched, like it could never happen and they would never consider it. I'm not saying they would go through with it. I'm certainly not saying they would do it now because maybe they got a little taste of the blowback.
Mm-hmm.
But they talked about it. And why do you think they talked about it?
Because they think it makes sense and they're open to it.
Right. Okay, now, me, the fan, I don't want to think about it because there is emotion and there's also logic, too. It's not just, that we love Pete because he's homegrown. Because the guy posts. He hits 50 homers every year. It's almost automatic. And he's not a 210 hitter. He had a bad down year last year. Fine. He's gotten better defensively at first base, although I think he'd be better as a DH. And he's going to be a guy who's going to hit you minimum 40 home runs. He should hit 250. He's going to drive 100 runs in New York. There's great value in that. Consistency, durability, and in New York. So it's not just emotion, although that does play a part of it.
This might be one of the toughest calls in, I'd say 20-something years. Like, this is, I get it.
It shouldn't even be a discussion. And the reason it is because the Mets aren't good enough.
Yes. It's the only reason I'm bringing this up.
You should never get to a point as a franchise that you have to consider making a tough decision on arguably your best player.
That is a good point. And here we are.
It should be automatic, especially when you have the finances that Cohen does. So this is not a money thing. They're not trading Pete because, we're not going to be able to sign him. No, it's Pete thinks he's worth this much. We think he's worth that much. And also, if he's not going to come to where we feel he's worth, I'm not going to overpay him, and we can maximize the return. That's how the conversation started last year.
Listen, if we're sitting here, and we'll get back to these calls, 877-337-6666, BT and Sal on the Fan. If we're sitting here, and these Mets had like a young Dwight Gooden or a Darling or an El Cid or the most recent iteration, obviously some of those studs that got to the World Series, of course, 2015. It's different. They've got nobody. Like, they're miles out of it. Like, they're just not there. And to me, it's that reality. It's a painful reality that brings me to say the time to trade Pete is now. 877-337-6666. BT and Sal on the Fan.